Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper Podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me today is my wife, JoAnna. JoAnna, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Great. We just had a 16th birthday party for our oldest son, so he got presents and cake, and he's going off tomorrow to start his first day of work for a concrete company. So I'm excited. That'll be good for him.
It's going to be a lot of work.
It's going to be hard work. It's going to be in the heat.
The summer.
Yep. And that's what's good for a boy. So tonight we are going to talk about divorce.
I don't want one.
Great. We are in agreement. So you wanted to, you kind of brought this up.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody at home, what made you think about talking about divorce tonight?
The last 6 months, I have spoken to many church-going ladies. They call themselves Christians that are thinking it over, thinking of possibly divorcing, or their marriage is miserable, kind of toying with the idea.
And they brought it up to you.
Yeah, yes.
You guys have talked, and they're running it by you.
Yeah, and also the idea of separation has been best around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of discouraged right now. It seems to be a big problem, and it has been for years, but I just feel like something's in the water lately, and everyone's they're considering throwing the towel in, and I'm frustrated because I've tried to help them and help them, but I feel like modern day Christians don't believe what the Bible's issue.
This just in, ladies and gentlemen. Christians in America today don't believe the Bible.
Well, yeah, and it's hardly the first issue where they take that stance.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about what subject to talk about,
mm-hmm.
I thought, well, this is one that keeps popping up in my life over the last 6 months, over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked in length, I don't know, maybe 15 times about it.
Yeah.
So.
And they're not divorced yet.
No. And this person doesn't want to, but it's there on the table somewhat.
Mm-hmm. So in the studies I've looked at, where do you think Christian couples in America today fare with divorces when you compare them to the rest of the world? The non-believing, non-Christian world. Where do you think they are?
Maybe 10% higher, like the average.
No.
Really?
Yeah. Christians get divorced more than the world.
More?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
You're
Christian.
kidding.
No, they have caught up to the world statistics and have passed them.
Wow.
As far as studies done in evangelical Christian churches.
I did not.
Yeah. Now, depending on the study, I could point you to some that tell us that we're even, some that tell you that we're doing a little better. But I haven't found any study that says Christians are just staying married forever and it's great. The world's falling apart. Now, Christian marriages that are staying together, I see to be really good, strong, healthy marriages. But there's nothing we are not a shining city on a hill as far as marriage goes in the world today.
I don't know why that caught me off guard so much, because my own experience should tell me it's kind of a big problem. I don't know. I can't. People have come to me in the last 6 months and are thinking about it, or it's sort of there.
All right. So I have, about a dozen or 18 reasons I divorced. And this, again, these are studies done that have to do with why Christians divorced.
Okay.
So I would like to hear some of your reasons that you hear people tell you as far as why they want to get
in here, because I remember all these conversations.
Yeah. And there are plenty of reasons. And don't get me wrong, some of these are legitimate problems that need fixed and need attention. Right. No one's saying that marriages are without problems. The idea is just that marriages are supposed to be without divorce. So let me start with a few Bible verses just so we can all start on the same foundation.
Yeah.
The Bible condemns divorce wholly. God condemns divorce. Jesus reiterated later on God's condemnation of divorce, but back in the law of Moses, we see that divorce was condemned already. It was never God's intent. The idea he talks about getting married is that two become one flesh. So to try to separate that, you're literally cutting a body in half. That's what you're doing, or more accurately, you're doing it in half. It's going to be an ugly mess, and it's not going to be good for either part. No, neither side's going to do real well. In Matthew 5, verses 31 through 2, and we're just going to read those two verses. This is Jesus speaking. It hath been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you, that put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced, committeth adultery. This is asked about divorce later on. The first one we went over was Matthew 5. Now I'm going to read from Matthew 19. And we read, they say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and put her away? He saith unto them, and this is Jesus speaking, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wife. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery, and whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. It's really clear. So any Christian that ever asks, the first thing I tell them is, well, God says no. And understand that whenever God says don't do this, it's because the thing is bad for you. So you shouldn't do it. That's why we're supposed to obey God. And when God says do this thing, we're supposed to do it because it's good for you. It's a blessing. God says do not get divorced. God says that marriage is a great thing. And when you look at the two, it's obvious there's no wiggle room here. The problem is, and we're going to kind of cover this when we go over some of these reasons for why a lot of Christians get divorced. Most people that I find are immature. They don't grow up.
Right.
They don't want to act like adults. And because of that, it makes the relationship hard. It makes it difficult when you are selfish and self-centered.
Of course. Yeah.
And that's at I think, kind of the center of every reason people get divorced. But tell me now. So, okay. So let me tell you this.
Can I ask something?
Yeah. Please. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So, you just read the Bible verses and it says, in the case of
marital unfaithfulness,
it's no longer a sin. However, there's the other verse you mentioned. It said in the beginning. So
correct.
I was under the impression after my personal reading that he doesn't want divorce in any circumstance.
Correct.
That's what I took away from it.
Yes.
His preference is you stay married. In fact, I mean, it's a sin if you. No.
100%. Divorce is a sin. Yeah, somebody's got to say it. Here you go. If anyone got on this podcast and thought that we were going to pussyfoot around and tiptoe around this subject, and tell people that, oh yeah, it's okay, and if and when, it is a sin. God.
He says adultery if you divorce, and then
the person that divorced you, they're committing adultery with whoever they end up with. Absolutely.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
It's bad. It's bad. And again, Jesus here says, no, it was because of the hardness of your hearts. That's the reason that there was even a provision for this in the very beginning.
So if
it was because of your screw up and your hard hearts.
And so people are taking the other side of it and running with it.
Yes.
Like, well, he said I could.
There's an exception.
Right.
Good enough.
Anyway, okay, go ahead.
So if you can believe it, what you think the reason for divorce would be?
No. I don't know if I could even guess. Money?
Money's on there. I mean, money's on the
Number one,
list.
just not liking each other anymore.
Well,
That's what it
yeah.
seems like.
I mean, people don't
That's my-
get a divorce,
I
on
don't
their
know.
honeymoon when they're in love. Well, a lot of people will guess an adulterous affair.
And I used to guess that. That would
Yeah.
have been my first
But
one.
believe it or not, most people stay together. There is adultery. If one
Wow.
spouse cheats on the other, that is something that people oftentimes work through. Funny enough,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I have.
it's other things that typically,
And those aren't the ones been mentioned in the Bible as maybe.
No. There's no other maybes. There's no
Yeah.
other, kind of exceptions. So what do you hear people that you talk to?
Well, so actually, nothing, no real big red flags, no big fireworks.
Mhm.
I haven't heard one of these people speak about infidelity.
Okay.
One person, maybe there
I
has
think they might be
been,
having an
they're having
affair,
a
but I don't
threesome,
know. Sure.
It's more of like, he's immature, he drinks a little too much. We just don't get along. We can't get along. We never talk, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And okay, granted, the people I'm speaking to sound miserable.
Yeah,
They're live in that situation. Also.
absolutely.
It sounds, and I'm only getting one side of the story,
Mhm.
but it's like life. So the problem is, he sounds like he's hard to live with or miserable to live with, and
Mhm.
that's pretty much across the board with everyone I've spoken to.
But honestly, hard to live with is going to be one of the symptoms of whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
If there's money problems, he's hard to live with. If there's substance abuse, they're hard to live with. No matter what you throw in there, they're gonna be hard to live with.
It's just flat out they're not getting along.
Mhm.
That's across the board.
Have they given any more specifics? Because really, immature. I agree. Okay, that's a specific, and I think that's at the root of a lot of these. And then drinks too much, alcohol and drug use, substance.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, I'm going to tell you that alcoholism and drug addiction, they're not they're not the problems. That's the person trying to find a solution to their problem.
Right.
Their problem is they might be wildly depressed. They might be wildly stressed out. They might have, there can be a lot of issues, but the drinking and the drugs is what they're doing to try to medicate so that they can numb the pain. They're going through pain for some other reason. And it's not the,
it's not the root problem.
No, it's not the root problem, symptom of it.
I understand.
I know people who, okay, so let me go over a couple of these. We have lack of communication. Now, I hate to say that's probably involved in all of these.
Definitely,
whatever problem you have, you're probably not doing a good job of talking, and you're not doing a good job of listening to the other person. The two people don't feel heard. We have, so one of these that came up was sexual problems, but it didn't go in and define it. This was just the list of the different reasons and why.
Uh-huh.
So, one of these problems is that's non-existent, but again, that's not a problem. It is non-existent because of a problem.
Right.
The two people hate each other.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So it's a secondary issue.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to want to be intimate, physically intimate when you hate them. There's no attraction there. It doesn't, physical attraction is overcome by your how repulsed person that you hate.
Yeah.
So, there's something going on there. Sometimes there are arguments about the couple's sex life. So, the couple's life in the bedroom, there are expectations and what each one, that they might have differences as far as what they want to do and not do, and levels of comfortability, things like that. That's not one of the biggest ones that I run in. One of the biggest ones is, let's see, here we go, in-laws interference.
I was just going to guess that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard, yeah.
When you have her family keeps butting in, his family keeps butting in,
so frustrating,
and they're a big problem, that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is typically a problem where whatever spouse has the family that keeps inserting their opinions and their, their thoughts and desires, that spouse will not side with the other spouse. So let's say my mom and dad are constantly sticking their nose in, and it's a big problem, and you're getting tired of hearing about it. It really only becomes a problem I side with them.
Sure. Yeah.
When I hear your complaints, okay, I'm going to have a talk with them, and we're going to figure this out, and we're going to fix this. That's when the problem stops. But what I find is in that situation, I, the man with the overbearing in-laws, or they're your in-laws, not mine.
Yeah.
With the overbearing parents, I am a coward and I don't want to stand up to my mom and dad. And that's what's required. I need to remind them that I married you and I'm not married to them, and I'm no longer the little boy and you're not their daughter. We are a couple and we're going to decide what we're going to do. And that's it, And it's also important that when I stand up to them, I need to let them know that this is my decision. Okay, JoAnna has nothing to do with this. JoAnna, I saw what was going on, and this is me pissed at you and telling you need to back off, and here are the reasons where we need to change something. Because you never want to talk with your in-laws and throw your spouse under the bus. That's hands down the worst thing you can do. Because if I go to my mom and dad and complain about you, then they have this picture of you as this terrible person. And then 2 days later, we make up and we're fine. They didn't see the makeup. So they still think that you're this terrible person. So you never want to poison the well by talking to your parents negatively about your spouse. You always want to paint a bright, sunny picture.
I agree.
So in-laws are a big one. Let's see, what else? Okay, so here are two that came up that just drive me crazy when I hear these. Or a couple. Boredom.
Boredom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm bored in the marriage, and
that's a lame one.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one.
So
you're just tired of each other?
Yeah. It's no longer, I'm no longer happy. Have you ever heard those?
Yeah, I have heard that. Fallen out of love.
Fallen out of love. Not happy anymore. Bored. Have you? Those again are just that I'm going to attribute to laziness. So one of the two, maybe both of them, are lazy and they're not putting any work in marriage. And because of that, they're getting bored with their spouse. And what they'll start to do is they'll start to fulfill the needs that they should have taken care of from their spouse in other places. So they spend more time at work and they enjoy their social interactions at work, and they have friends and they have emotional support, at different places rather than in the home. So the husband and the wife spend less and less time together. They talk with other people instead of their spouse about their fears and their desires and their hopes and their dreams. And they start to receive the fulfillment, a healthy relationship somewhere else.
Right. And then, like you said, that's definitely, I would say, laziness also. Work at your relationship always to keep it strong.
Yeah. If you're not spending time with your spouse, not talking with them, if you're not making plans about the future, if you're not,
Mhm.
you are, it's no different than any friendship you have.
Yeah, you got to work on it.
You have to spend time with your friend. Otherwise, the friendship just kind of fizzles and goes away.
Yeah.
And when you reconnect with that friend 6 months or a year later, it's nice. And you remember, that you were friends at one time, but you're not really close.
Have you ever had it to where someone you were really great friends with,
Mhm.
and then that time did lapse, you got back together, and it was weird and awkward?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it when that happened to me. I could see that happening if you're
Yeah. I mean, for me, I remember when I left high school and went to college, and all my friends went to college, and I didn't see them for a couple of years, and then when we got back together 2 years later over the summer, visiting for whatever, a holiday or something at home, and we ran into each other and caught up. It's like, yeah, I haven't talked to this person in, years. Yeah, what's going on with
Right.
them? And yeah, they're
Yeah.
different, and I have not been keeping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the relationship gets a little
stale.
yeah, and there's just a disconnect. So I get that as far as, the boredom, but if I'm bored in my relationship, it's my fault. That's the problem. The problem is me. So I can fix boredom if I want to. But then immaturity and selfishness, I think, are the driving forces from many divorces. When there are problems, people are just apathetic. Who cares? And they don't want to fix it. They don't want to put in any effort. They don't care. And stuff worse. In other cases, I understand sometimes, like we talked about earlier, lack of communication.
That's a tough one.
And for that one, I don't think it's apathy. I think it's ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't know how to talk to each other. But then the failure comes when neither of them try to work on it. You can read a book that'll help you with communication. You can listen to an audiobook. You can go to a therapist. You can learn how to do better at these things. You can find out why your wife is telling you that you don't communicate well, and you can fix it. A lot of guys are not willing to do that. I don't know if women are, but a lot of people, I can say, are not willing to put in the effort. So then guess what? Be a terrible communicator, and it's going to be a point of frustration for your spouse, and you can just continue on that road until you get divorced, or you can do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a friend, I forget the book, but she had kind of nonstop problems that kept popping up. So she bought a book written for women
Mhm.
and how to respond.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like how to get what you want.
Yeah.
And she keeps telling me it's working great.
Yep.
And he doesn't even know.
Yep.
And he's changed how he's responded to her, and he doesn't realize what's happened.
Yep.
Anyway, I should have looked at that book before the podcast, but
Yeah.
it's your little secret.
Yeah, I remember.
But she's acting actually nicer to him.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if I pointed that out to her.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Well, if it's working, just leave it be.
Yeah.
Don't mention it. You
Maybe
don't want it to
that's
fall
my
apart.
secret to her.
But really, someone saw that there was a problem.
Yeah.
They got a book. They read the book.
They
and
applied it.
They
Yeah.
applied it, and things got better.
Mhm.
So great. We learned something, and our marriage improved. Now, you might have to read a couple of books. But again, what I don't think enough people recognize when talking about marriage and divorce is that a marriage is worth the work to make it great. And divorce is going to be hands down the worst thing you ever do in your entire life.
It is so it's such wreckage after a divorce, and it's not worth it.
Mhm.
I mean, look at the kids of the divorce.
They're messed up forever.
Yeah, and we have a friend in California who's a PhD. He's with almost everyone, it seems like, in the state of California. He wrote a book on the subject, and he took interviews of all of these troubled teenagers, and every single one of them came from a divorced home. Kids that were cut, bulimic,
Attempted suicide.
Attempted
all
suicide.
kinds of stuff.
And he interviewed each one of them and had them write a very short story and draw a picture about their experience with the divorce. and they all said it's terrible. And
Yeah.
they wish they had gotten back, had stayed together.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a crushing event in any family's life. And for some reason, husbands and wives are so selfish and so immature that they're willing to look past the destruction it's going to cause their children.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it anyhow.
Yeah, and I can't see that. It's not good.
No, really, people need to have their priorities changed, and they need to understand that a good, healthy family is hands down the entire world. Your career, it doesn't matter. The amount of money you make, it doesn't matter. Would we have more money? Sure. But it's never worth your family suffering. A good, strong, healthy marriage and a good, strong family is going to make you and your children the happiest over anything else you could have in your life. So therefore, you need to put energy into it. When you see a problem, you need to do whatever it takes to fix it. When there's an issue, you need to stop whatever else is going on, and you need to say, okay, this is fixed because this just isn't any good.
Yeah, it's priority number one.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have much more?
I got some other things.
Okay.
We went over, well, let's talk about drug and alcohol addiction and abuse.
Yes. I have been ripped apart, ripped to shreds because of my stance on marriage by people who have divorced over violence, physical.
We're talking about drug and alcohol abuse.
Drug and alcohol abuse.
Yeah, we're not on to physical abuse. It's on the list, and we can talk about it, or we'll get there. Okay, so drug and alcohol addiction. Now, this one is
that's a tough one to deal with.
It's a horrible one to deal with, and it's important that everyone on the podcast know that I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Along with that, I'm a pastor. So what you have is a guy who attends 12-step recovery programs regularly and also ends up marrying some of the people in those groups. Mm-hmm. So that's always a question that comes up, or kind of a concern, is, well, what if they really, what if they go back out, and start drinking or start doing drugs
again? Danger to the children. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And what would you recommend?
Well, so let's lump a few of these in. So we have physical abuse. We have sexual abuse, which is typically not spouse, parent to child, or step parent to child. Okay, so if you have sexual abuse, you have physical abuse. If you have, let's say, drug addiction that is endangering, the lives of the people in the house, then you need to separate. You don't need to stay in the same home and continue continue to get beat up, or have the opportunity or potential for for any of that stuff. Those things, you want to separate yourself and make sure everybody is safe.
Physically separate yourself.
Correct.
Safety.
But what I'm going to say, which nobody else says, is that getting into a fight, having a physical altercation, spouse to spouse, and I've had friends, wife's had a black eye, and I've had friends where the husband's had a black eye. Okay. Oh yeah. I've met, women who have beat up their husbands, and I've met husbands that have beat up wives. Both of them are terrible, and we would like to think that those things never happen, but they do. And I think it's far too easy for people to just write off physical abuse across the board and say, that's it. That's a reason for divorce. They need to get away from that person forever. First of all, that's not what the Bible says. And second of all, there are lots of cases where these things happen and the person just needs help.
Yeah.
So start by just safely separating the couple, and then they can evaluate where they are and see if they can get help and keep this thing going. Because I have seen that work where
So,
it, yeah,
right, one of them goes and gets whatever classes or help, or maybe there's legal ramifications you have to go through first.
I've men and women who have been beat up physically at times in their life, which has caused post-traumatic stress,
Mhm.
and they have had, occasions where they have acted out and they have crossed the line physically with their spouse. For me to say anytime that happens,
It's over.
it's when they need to get a divorce, I think is absurd. Now, there are going to be some cases where, yeah, people are going to get divorced because someone doesn't feel safe with this other person. But here, you want to know the biggest problem? Because the biggest problem is people don't know who they're marrying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you
Are you telling me that you had no indication the person was violent before you married them? Are you telling me you had no idea that they had a past where they suffered from substance abuse prior to marriage? Give me a break. If you find out, you can do a background check on anybody. We do a background check to rent a condo for a weekend. We do a background check we do a background check to rent a car or to get a job at McDonald's. And people don't do that before jumping into marriage. You don't want to know if the person you're marrying might have a, sexual assault against a minor charge. You don't think that might be important enough to figure out before you get married? Hey, guess what, moron? You had the chance to do it. You married a terrible person. The fix was don't marry them. That's the answer. Don't marry a monster.
Well, that's a good point.
I feel better.
You got it out of your system.
Okay.
Yeah, I never thought of that. You could do that.
Here's the thing. There's an old Jewish saying that I live by and I use all the time. It goes like this. The way it begins is the way it'll end. And people get married to morons, and they're typically acting as a themselves when they marry this idiot or this monster, and they think, oh, I can change them. And, oh, I know that they have this problem, but, when they're doing well, they're so much better.
I have heard that so many times.
Yeah.
And we all kind of think that way.
Yeah, and young. It's moronic. It's so there's a breakdown of the parents of these people not telling them you should not marry this person. Yeah, they are an idiot. Problem. They are a monster. Stay away from them. It's going to be a train wreck for the rest of your life. So there's a breakdown with the parents not telling their kid to marry. There's a breakdown with the kids not being smart enough or wise enough to not marry this idiot monster. They don't go to their pastor. They don't go to their rabbi. They don't seek counsel like the Bible says. They just marry this person with this pie in the sky, romantic comedy, happily ever after Cinderella nonsense in their head that everything's going to be great once we get married, because America's been ruined by romantic comedies. That's what's happened. America has been ruined by romantic comedies. Everyone just thinks that, yeah, you get married and you live happily, ever after. And really, it's happily once in a while. So people need to do their due diligence prior to getting married. That's what needs to happen. You would be able to skip a lot of these things. How about we don't marry someone drug or alcohol addiction until they have, 5 years sober?
That would be.
Would that change things quite a bit?
It would help a lot of relationships that I've seen.
Rather than, they're still with it? Well, you're an idiot for marrying them then.
Yeah, and they shouldn't
And
be.
20
Yeah.
years later, they're thinking about getting a divorce because they're immature and they still drink too much. Oh, no kidding. Were they immature and they drank too much when you got married? Oh, really? Okay. You're the problem. You're an idiot. That's what's going on with so many of these marriages. So
What do
again,
you do in that? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. If you meet person A, person B, and that's what happened. Now they come to you and they say, well, this is a situation I'm in and I'm considering divorce, you know, and they did marry the wrong person.
okay, so let me ask you
What do you
this.
do?
Well,
How do you help them?
you're asking the abortion scenario.
Yeah.
You had a chance to make the right decision. You
Yeah.
made the wrong decision. Okay,
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
premarital sex. That was your decision. You decided to do it anyhow and got pregnant. Now you're happy if abortion is okay? No. But this, but that, but the other it. Chance you can do it.
You put
Yes.
and you do the best you can.
There you go.
And you can pray for God to
You
help
work on it.
Yeah.
You work on it. You get counseling. You go to therapy. You read books. You try to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
It's great when both people are doing that.
Yeah, that's ideal.
It's ideal. It makes it a lot better. But that's not always going to happen.
No. And in fact, all of the 100% of the ladies I spoke to, according to them, their side is that the spouse wants nothing to do with therapy, or he tried it and he blew it off, or it sounds as if it's very one-sided. So
I can see that a lot of these are going to be absolutely divorced. I mean, I'm a gambling man. I like to gamble. And I would give, really good odds for anyone that's betting against that marriage. Anyone betting against the divorce, because it's definitely going to be coming. Now, you can still find happiness in your life, even if your spouse is not willing to go along.
Yeah, I agree. I heard, I don't know if you remember, there was a pastor who came to one of the churches we were part of a long time ago. And he might have been in New Mexico. So his wife did a lady sort of a meeting or talk, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And she told us their testimony, their story. So
Down in New Mexico?
I think so.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she told them that maybe before they were both saved, he was horribly abusive, violent. And I think she did separate. She got into another physical location.
Yeah.
But she didn't want a divorce. And she decided she was going to stay married no matter what. But she would pray. She would fast and pray.
Yeah.
And beg God to change him. And then that's what happened. But she wasn't going to divorce.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to stay in the house with him and get beat up.
Sure.
But she believed or hoped, that God would do something. And he did.
Yeah.
And the fasting thing. Yeah. How many people won't do that?
Yeah. And you've even brought that up with some of your friends where you told the ladies, like, look, these are your options. This is one thing that I'm going to suggest. Have you fasted and prayed about it? And they're like, oh, I can't fast.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you're an idiot.
Well,
okay, you absolutely can't.
Right. According to her, she had tried everything else, talked to him, tried to have him come to therapy, which he did a few times, then it didn't seem to go anywhere. And he went so far as to say, he did want the divorce, but he won't file the papers, and she's not going to. So, yeah, I asked her, well, okay, you've prayed about it. Have you fasted and prayed? Because the Bible seems to indicate there's some things that aren't going to change unless you do that.
Yes.
That's kind of your last, plea with the Lord.
Fasting is the way to show God that you're taking something seriously, and you are demonstrating your complete reliance upon Him.
It's like pulling out all the stops, they say, right?
Yeah, fasting is 100% biblical. It's something that you're supposed to do regularly. You're supposed to fast and pray. And when you have something that is, very serious, that's what you would find in the Bible. You would find that people would add extra when people were repenting of their sin, they would oftentimes sit in sackcloth and ashes. They wouldn't just repent. They wouldn't just go to God and ask for forgiveness of their sins and beg God to have mercy on them. They would do something else in sackcloth and ashes as a demonstration of their humility to God. And in the same way, when we need God to act on our behalf in a special way, we would fast. And that's what Jesus said. And he said, when you fast, this is the way you're supposed to do it. He said that when you are trying to do my work here on earth, which includes at some time casting out demons, certain ones will not go out other than by prayer and fasting. And that was the problem. You guys weren't fasting, and therefore it didn't work. So it's a very legitimate thing that we are all supposed to be doing. My point was simply that was her line in the sand.
Yeah, she said, I can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I don't have any other advice.
Yeah.
For you.
That's what the Bible says to do. Okay, I know of a couple who were married for, I don't remember how many years. I'm going to say it was over 10 years. The husband actually had a situation where he sexually assaulted a couple of his daughters.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
They separated. Okay, so mom and dad, mom left with the kids. The dad continued to work and support the mom and the kids. They remained separated for like a dozen years, all the while working on this. And then, and they are back together.
Wow.
Yeah. And they got married. They had another ceremony. They never got divorced. They just wanted another marriage ceremony, kind of as a demonstration of what we're doing. And all of their kids were there. All of their kids and grandkids were all there.
That is wild.
Yeah.
But
look, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that everyone is going to be willing to do what they need to in order to have that success. What I'm saying is it is capable. And this was a Christian family who raised their kids in church and wanted to do God's way. And all of their kids are still in church. And one of the daughters married a pastor. And, they're all faithful members of churches that love the Lord Jesus. What I'm saying is it is possible. These things can be remedied, even though, yes, it might sound like it's probably not going to happen. And it would be probably pretty tough if the wife was a punching bag for her husband, or, the husband or the wife sexually assaulted, one of the children. Yes, those absolutely are terrible, and they sound like impossible things to overcome. I'm not saying anything different. What I'm saying is it can happen. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and even if it doesn't, the Bible still doesn't allow for the divorce. So
correct.
You could just live separate, and you don't have to pull that trigger and sign the papers.
And really, that's the idea that Christians need to get into their head, is that you are going to remain married until the day you die. Now, you might not end up living together because you hate one another.
Or there's abuse or something.
Sure, there's a case, there's a situation, where it's not safe. But, I mean, let's face it, usually that's a case where, it's for a time.
Right.
But either way, it doesn't matter. You hate each other, there's a safety issue, whatever the reason. You guys separate. You have an apartment. They have an apartment. You live separately. But you honor your contract with God.
Yeah, good.
That's
married. A great way to put it. And that's one where I think people just playing for God.
Yeah, that's an option.
I had so many people get mad at me and say, well, he did this and, he was hurting me and all of this stuff. So I had to divorce him.
Yeah. No, you didn't.
I think, well, wait a minute. You didn't, get out of the house. Don't let him beat you.
That's fine.
Call the police on him.
Sure.
Whatever. Get your pastor, get your big burly friends over there to shake him down or something. But you don't go right to divorce. It's a frustration for me because I feel like people so quickly just, whatever.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so when I marry people, I tell them, I say, look, I have several standards for marrying someone. It is going to Christian ceremony. I'm going to read out of the Bible. We're going to talk about Jesus and God and marriage from the Bible. We are going to have vows that you are going to say to each other that come from the Bible. You are going to promise God these things. If you're not okay with that, get someone else to marry you, because marriage is a covenant between you and God. You are not promising your wife that you will love her through sickness and health and for richer or for poorer. No, that you're not promising her. You're promising God what you're going to do. And people forget that, and they just say, it's not convenient. I don't really like it that much anymore. You know, one friend that before they got married was asking me a situation about, it was really coming down to, they were feeling me out for like divorce. And it was the woman that was talking to me, and she's like, well, you know, he has a little bit of a temper. And I said, I get it. I have a little bit of a temper too. You know, tell me about that. And she said, well, you know, there's one case that I, you know, heard about with his ex-girlfriend. They were in whatever, you know, kind of a, I use the term knockdown, drag out fight. I don't literally mean they were like punching each other. I just mean it was a real good fight. Oh, they're yelling and screaming at each other. Okay, saying mean things, and you know, they really don't like each other right now. So they were having some kind of argument, and you know, it was I don't remember, in the middle of breaking up or whatever, but he wanted her to leave and she wouldn't. So he went into wherever, the bedroom, and grabbed all of her stuff and threw it in a bag and just threw it out onto the lawn, you know, and said, get out, and grabbed a couple more of her things and just threw them out on the lawn.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a heck of a scene. You know, I'm sure it would have been great as a neighbor to watch this. I mean, and you know what?
Actually, that makes a good scene in a movie.
Yeah. And I know that I've had fights like that, you know, so no one's proud the next day that that's what happened, but either way, so that was what was going on. Anyway, she said to me, if he ever did that to me, I would absolutely file for divorce.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I said, then you shouldn't get married.
What did she say?
And she was so shocked and looked at me like in disbelief, couldn't believe that I'd say that, you know, and she's like, you're okay with that? I'm like, no, I'm not okay with that. He was like a child. That's not acceptable. But what part of the vows of marriage do you not understand? You're saying that that's the law saying?
Yeah.
Well, God forbid he gets Alzheimer's, or, you know, gets Parkinson's, or loses his job and, you know, can't find a good job because of his bad back. You know, what are you talking about? Yes, it was a bonehead, stupid thing that he did, and he has a temper that, you know, needs some help and attention, obviously. You're going to divorce him for that? If that's what you're going into marriage with, then you should not get married. Yeah. The whole idea is when this person struggles, they fall back off the wagon, okay, with drinking or drugs. They're going through massive depression and they lose their job, and, you know, whatever's going on, we're supposed to be a cheerleader for our spouse. We're supposed to be the one that is the most encouraging, to help them become what we know they can be and to get back to where they can be in their life with God. How many times have you gone to a sporting event and the basketball team starts to lose, and cheerleaders for that team are on the sideline going, "Boo! Warm up the car. I'm out of here." It's ridiculous. It's supposed to be a team. No, when struggling, the other teammates come to their aid and help them across the finish line.
That is such a good analogy. I never thought of.
I know. I'm so smart.
Yeah. you're the worst. They can see why I married you.
Yep.
Well, and sometimes, most of the time, it's the spouse that is the worst. Not the, not the cheerleader, the opposite. When
Explain. Just use boy, girl, husband, wife, so we know what we're talking.
the
Yeah,
husband
lay it out.
is
Okay,
the one drinking.
Husband's drinking. Obviously, it's the
and
husband.
the wife is ripping him to shreds over it instead
Yep.
of, oh, you did it again, you loser, or whatever.
Yep.
How could you do this? And they're speaking out of hurt and frustration. So that seems to be what would be the most likely scenario over being a cheerleader.
Sure, that's how you feel.
Yeah.
I get it.
Sure, that's how you feel.
You feel betrayed, and you can see that the bank account is missing a zero because of this escapade or whatever. I get it, and you don't want to stay around that person, but that's the point. Is you made this promise? Did you not think that things could ever get bad,
or better, or for worse?
And that was really my point. Is I don't think enough people take it seriously.
No, they don't go into it where I am committed for the long haul, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. We've talked about it before we were married. I think we both separately decided divorce is not in the vocabulary.
Yeah. That's
what I decided on. I know you did.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
In my, what is it called, lexicon? Sure. But I decided.
In your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to work it out. Whatever it is, we're going to see it through, work it out. And if need be, find things to make me happy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
If that's, God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah. Going into it with that attitude that divorce is not an option is really an imperative if you're going to survive the hard times. The idea is when something is broke, you fix it. And in America today, we have this mentality of when something's broke, we throw it away and we buy a new one.
Yep.
And that's transferring to marriage. It's no longer just shoes and televisions. It's also marriage. Yeah.
And in the wake of all this are, ourselves, honestly, the people getting divorced, but the children. I mean, our families are almost non-existent in this country, it seems like. We don't have strong families anymore.
No, and the kids are obviously the ones that suffer. And what happened is that the curses from God affect multiple generations. It's not just you. You're going to affect your kids, and you're going to affect your grandkids, because children of parents have been divorced are like 10 times more likely to get a divorce themselves.
Yeah.
So you're really hurting multiple generations. And I don't think a lot of people really look at that or think about that. Now, there are a couple more. We had, I'll say there are 3 of them that are pretty common. This one is, it upsets me that this one makes the list. Financial problems.
Yeah, that is actually surprising to me.
The reason it upsets me that it makes the list, it is hands down the easiest one to remedy. Because we're just dealing with math.
Yeah.
You literally just need to get on a budget and both stick to it. Right. That's it.
Right.
And that goes to show the level of immaturity of the people.
Lack of commitment, too, to anything.
Lack of discipline.
Discipline, yeah.
That shows that level of immaturity of the people that are getting the divorce. They're not even willing to get on a budget and live on an allowance. Now, keep in mind, that's all they can afford. Clearly, when you have financial problems, it's because you're spending all your money. And a lot of times you're spending money you don't even have. You might be racking up credit card debt. Nobody is complaining about financial problems and wanting to get a divorce because they just make too much money and they don't know what to do with it. Right. So whether you're single, I don't think people get this. Whether you're single or married, you still can't spend more money than you make every month.
You're kidding.
No, No, they've tried it. The U.S. government has been trying it for centuries.
Well, we're about to run out of that runway.
Yeah, it does not work. So the financial problems, the solution is always just math. It's a budget. Get on a budget, live on an allowance, and that's
so both people or one person in the relationship won't even curb their spending to make the other one happy. So they'll just call it quits.
That is, it is so lame because it's so easily fixable.
Yeah.
Other things are a lot harder.
Yeah.
Communication issues. She won't communicate. She always gets mad at me for everything. Those things come from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
They probably come from her childhood, his childhood, and her experience, life, and his experience. And that's going to take a little bit of work to figure out and help them along with. The money one, I mean, I can fix anybody's money problems in 1 hour of counseling if they're honest with me and open. It's that easy. You make this much, you spend that much. Well, we need to get these numbers changed to where the outgo is less than the income. So what are we going to cut? And that's it. Okay, sell that car, sell that car, sell that car, sell the house, sell the boat. Done. Buy a smaller house, buy a cheaper car, buy a cheaper car. Here's your new allowance. Now, I'm not saying it's a lot of fun. People are going to want to do it, or it's easy, but it's real simple.
A lot easier going through a divorce, though.
Yeah, and it's a lot lot
Yeah,
you think your financial problems are bad now. When you go through a divorce, it's like
mm-hmm.
You can't get a loan for several years. Your credit is a mess. You can't buy a house or a car. You can't even get a hotel room. Okay, two others that are on the list that I wanted to bring up. Religious or cultural differences.
Yeah. Another thing I hadn't thought of. I feel like I'm saying that all night, but and how many couples do you know that they don't even think to discuss how they're going to raise their kids when they come along as far as religion goes or church?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you are serious about your religion, why would you marry someone of a different religion?
I don't know.
Again, that's one of my, kind of like, well, you're the idiot here. You married her. You knew what she believed ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
You knew what he believed ahead of time. Why did you get married?
And do you think that is when you have that list in front of you, what would be the cause of divorce there? Would it be those different religions?
Yeah, typically it's going to come to a head when you have children.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have to make a decision. Well, which way are we going to raise them?
What are we going to teach them?
Yeah. So you need one of the parents to essentially say, well, I don't care enough about my religion. Go ahead and teach them yours. Mm-hmm. Well, nobody wants to say that because you feel like a horrible follower of whatever religion we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're willing to just throw in the towel and say, it's not that important, go ahead and teach them what you believe.
Right.
So that's usually when it comes along. Now, as far as, two people that are not that serious about their religion, okay, I'm a Lutheran, you're a Presbyterian, you're going to do your thing on Sunday, I'm going to do my thing. I don't care that much about it. You whatever, hang out with some of your friends at your church.
Yeah.
It's not a deal.
If they're not that
serious or involved,
a few couples like that,
then why is it going to be a problem?
Right.
It's only going to be a problem when somebody is serious about their faith. Now, the one time that it is an issue is when both people are lost worldly people who get married and then one of them goes to Jesus.
Yeah.
That is a pretty interesting situation. And it happens plenty. People get saved. So now what do we do? And what I want to tell everyone is the Christian doesn't have any right to divorce their unbelieving spouse. Now, if you were a believer ahead of time, you should not marry an unbeliever.
Yeah, it says that.
It's,
Clear as day.
it
Don't be
says that
unbeliever.
clearly in the Bible. But if neither of you guys are saved and one of you happens to become born again, well, what are you going to do? And the Bible has instructions for that as well. We're not going to veer off because we just hit an hour, so we're going to be wrapping it up here in a second. But you don't get a pass. You don't get, there's no excuse that, there's never a time where, oh, well, God would understand that I'm getting a divorce. No, he doesn't. He's against it. He's against whatever reason you bring up. So don't think that there's some special situation where God's going to, wave you on and give you a pass. That's absolutely not how it's going to work. Okay, the last one was differences in child rearing.
I could see that causing a lot of problems.
It does.
Yeah. And I haven't talked to anyone where that ain't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Have you?
I've never talked to anyone that's brought that up and said that's why they wanted to get a divorce, but I've met lots of couples who clearly have differences of opinion as to how to raise the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it causes a boatload of stress in the relationship.
Yeah.
So what I would say is you need to be on board with how you're going to train your kids, how you're going to discipline your kids, how you're going to educate your kids, how you're going to educate your kids about God and religion and the Bible. You obviously want to marry someone who has similar feelings on those different subjects because it's going to be very important.
Yeah. You can definitely see that.
So with that, we've hit an hour. Did you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to bring up? Any questions you wanted to ask before we
just
wrap it up and go?
Yeah. One quick thing would be, how would you help someone who said, my spouse has been cheating on me and I'm too brokenhearted, or serial cheating? I had a discussion with someone that happened in the family, not her, but in someone's family. The husband was cheating more than once, over and over, and the wife, it destroyed her self-esteem, and anyway, they ended up divorcing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you met someone who came to you as a Christian and said, what do I do? My spouse is cheating. I know.
Yeah.
How do you advise them to stay in the relationship?
Well, here's the thing. It's never going to. So what I would do is I would say, okay, well, let me ask you this. Can I approach your spouse and talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay. If not, all right, well, there's not much help that's going to be had there. People change their behavior once they are going through enough pain to where they are willing to make a change. So I know, one couple that I'm friends with comes to mind immediately, where the wife had to tell the husband, is an ultimate, okay, if you do it again, I'm gone. And he, cheated on her again, and she moved out and took the kids. And then all of a sudden, his life was radically different because they were still a couple that was, they had active social life. He was no longer a part of the kids. He missed them. Yeah. He wasn't a part of any of their extracurriculars at school. He didn't like being a bachelor.
Yeah.
So there was pressure there. And then he ended up coming to therapy and, working through that. They remained married the whole time.
Wow. So she didn't.
Oh, no, she didn't file for divorce or nothing, but she's like, I'm not living.
Yeah,
I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. So, yep, you make your decision, but next time me and the kids are gone. And it was brought up as far as, getting help and, hemming and hawing and dragging his feet. And then he ended up cheating on his wife again. And she's like, all right, that's it. We're gone. See you later. So the pressure was put on his life and he straightened up and decided to get his act together. He went to her and said, okay, what do I have to do? And she said, okay, well, I've already been, talking to a therapist, you can come with, here's the first book we're reading, and they went on down the road and started that, and they were fine. They got back together.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious to hear what you would advise.
I mean,
how we handle that.
Again, I'm not a huge fan of ultimatums, but they need to be made in a lot of different circumstances, especially when that is involved with, say, drug addiction or alcohol abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Those are often something that needs to be done. So ultimatums have their place, and a lot of times they will get someone to a point they're willing to make a change in their life. No one enjoys them. It's going to be a rocky weekend or a couple of weeks while you're going through that transition. Yeah. But at the same time, that's usually what it takes to get people to take it serious. So
yeah,
I don't see that there's anything wrong with that. But the underlining message is stay married at all costs. Do not get a divorce. Whatever you can do to stay together, that's what you want to do. The last thing you want to do is file for divorce and think that you're going to be better off. You and your spouse are going to be cursed of God. So are your children. So are your grandchildren. Do whatever you can to keep that from happening. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You can catch us live on our Facebook page or YouTube channel every Sunday night at 7 p.m.-ish. And if you just go to Google and search Bible Thumper Podcast, you'll find out where we are on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. And please listen, download, share, comment, review. It helps get the podcast in front of some other people. And with that, we'll be back next Sunday night at 7 p.m. I'm going to have Caleb on here. And I think we're going to be talking about Christian hypocrisy. So, thank you, everyone, for joining us, sweetie. Thank you for getting on here and do this with me.
Thanks for having me.
It was a blast, and we will see you next week.